I'm Helen Lockhead, Dean of the Faculty of Built Environment at UNSW, and I'd like to welcome everyone here to tonight's event, Engaging Women in the Built Environment. I'd particularly like to welcome guests from government, professional bodies, industry, and of course my UNSW colleagues, alumni, and students. Before we hear from our great lineup of speakers tonight, I'd like to provide you some background on the genesis of tonight's event. Despite the high numbers of women graduating from built environment programs in universities across Australia, the professional roadblocks, level of progression, and attrition experienced by women is disproportionate to their male counterparts. And it's not much better in universities. In 2011, an ARC linkage grant researching equity and diversity in the Australian architecture profession, women, work and leadership, revealed a range of inequities. As a result, various initiatives have been developed, including PALA, which Justine Clark will touch on tonight, the AIA Champions of Change, and AIA Gender Equity Task Force. In the construction industry, the most male-dominated sector in Australia, with only 12% in the workforce, only 12% of women in the workforce, there is even greater inequity and attrition. An ARC linkage grant completed by UNSW colleagues in 2016 into demolishing gender structures in the construction industry revealed systemic issues and made recommendations to improve recruitment, retention, and progression. Recommendations included companies needing to know Companies need to own work practices and policies, but they also need to change the narrative and recognise and celebrate the diverse and varied career pathways and incorporate job sharing, flexible hours, and career breaks as standard. But we can do more. Our challenge is to get equal representation of women in leadership roles in the built environment professions, and that requires working together in more innovative ways. This initiative is just but one step and one part. This forum was conceived to profile the depth and breadth of women from all built environment professions, from early career to industry leaders, which are reflective of the programs we have on offer in our faculty. An event such as this is a great opportunity to acknowledge achievements of women and their agile and professional career paths, particularly fitting, I believe, and probably essential to the rapidly changing world in which we live, where we may be working in multiple roles in our lifetimes and in areas of work not yet even imagined. It is one of many initiatives that we are developing to support and foster women's careers in industry, government and universities through mentoring, internships and graduate placement opportunities, teaching, research partnerships, and scholarships, especially for women to pursue their academic ambitions and professional development. Building on the 2016 initiative, last year's speakers have gone on to do even more great things than what they revealed last year. And so I'm just going to touch on a few of the highlights. Adjunct Professor Diane Jones, after last year's event, connected with like-minded research and had developed a research project on high-rise intergenerational living. Amelia Holliday and Isabel Toland from Eileen Sage have their 2016 Venice Architecture Biennale exhibit, The Pool, opening at the National Gallery of Victoria in Melbourne this month. Alison Myrons shattered the glass ceiling with her appointment as first CEO of new construction company Roberts Pizzarotti. And Associate Professor Linda Corkery is now National President of the Australian Institute of Landscape Architects. Alison Page has joined our faculty as an adjunct associate professor and is working with us to develop Indigenous cultural content in our built environment programs. Nicole Gardner completed her PhD and is expanding her research into the relationship between gender and advanced technologies in practice. And Dr. Hazel Easthope was appointed our very first Scientia Fellow in the faculty after a global search. Adjunct Professor Sue Barnsley is broadening her horizons with significant public projects in Tasmania, and Eva Djurkovic has set up an interior architecture internship program and is also about to give birth to her very first child. Shan Wang is currently in the technological development phase for her Rome device, and Jane Rothschild and Caroline Kite from the Angawadi project have completed 2 new preschools in India. with help from volunteers solicited last year. And finally, Professor Sue Holliday is launching a new grad certificate in advanced city policy and practice starting in 2018, along with 3 other new postgrad programs that we're launching, the Master of Landscape Architecture and the Master of City Analytics, and also a new PhD by practice. So enroll now. So without further ado, it gives me great pleasure to hand over to our speakers, who will each have 3 minutes to present their background, what they're known for, and how they want to connect. Our first speaker for tonight is Justine Clark.
Thanks, Helen, and hello, everybody. And I'm just going to get going because I'm scared I'm going to be kicked off if I don't. So I thought I'd start with a favourite drawing of mine, the accidental marks made by twisting a pencil against film to sharpen it. And of course, this drawing dates me. I'm very old. But it also captures many things that have interested me over the years. I studied architecture in Auckland in the late 80s. It was an incredibly eclectic degree with a very wide idea of what architecture might be, and a strong focus on critically engaging with representation and a healthy dose of feminist and post-colonial theory. I think it set me up quite well for what I went on to do. Later, when writing my research masters on drawing and gender, I became fascinated by the space between intention and accident, and by the role serendipity plays in any act of making. And these kind of interests have stayed with me and continue to influence everything I do. I also became very interested in the space between the academy and practice, between research and action, and that's an area in which I found myself for most of my career. So what am I known for? Now I think I'm mostly known for my work with Parla, Women Equity Architecture. Before that, I was known for a decade of work on Architecture Australia, and before that, in another country, for a book on post-war modernism. It's a strange mix, but there are many connecting threads. And what do I want to be known for? Doing a good job, helping make opportunity for others, and I'm sure those are ambitions which I share with many in the audience. So what can we do for ourselves? What can we do to help ourselves? I thought I'd just very quickly, run through the many ways that Parla has tried to make spaces to speak for others and for ourselves, and how we can support each other in working towards a more equitable built environment. So, number 1, put equity, diversity and inclusion at the centre of discussions about the future of our professions, not as a kind of marginal concern. Know the data. Don't rely on myth and anecdote. Number 3, help improve your workplace. The Parla Guides to Equitable Practice are a great place to start with this. I encourage you to read them, use them, and send us your feedback, because we will be shortly revising them. Make sure those who've gone before us are part of our histories of architecture. Write them into Wikipedia. Again, we've got a guide to help you do it. Support others by sharing your stories and your knowledge. We've got a new series called Letters to Your Younger Self, which we'd really welcome contributions to. Guest host Parla Instagram. I'm looking for more hosts now. These are all kind of small ways that you can share what you know and what you've learnt. Make yourself visible. And my colleague Jill Matthewson says, I'm nearly done. When you become visible, we all become visible. So put your profile up on Marion's List, our online register for women in the built environment. And use Marion's List yourself when you're organising events. Make sure that you have lots of women get the opportunity to participate. Lastly, support each other. And if you can, support Parla. Because we want to keep supporting you.
Hi everyone, we're Chrysler and Jade from Tom Mark Henry. So I'll start with a little background of myself. I graduated from the Bachelor of the Interior Architecture program at UNSW in 2010 In 2011, I moved to New York to try my hand at working in an architecture practice over there in their interiors sector. It was a really great first year of experience for me. I came back after that year really excited about the opportunities and started Mark and Henry, our first business, together with Jade. In 2014, we formed Tom, Mark, Henry, and we've now got 8 amazing staff, some of which are here tonight. Jade will tell you a little bit about herself.
Hi, I'm Jade. I did interior architecture with Kushler. After we graduated, I worked at a firm called Glasgow Hart, which is a small interior design and architecture firm, where I did a lot of work on government jobs like the Department of Public Prosecutions, and then formed Mark and Henry with Kushler, and then formed Tom, Mark, Henry.
So in our relatively short 3 years of business together, we've luckily got some pretty key projects under our belt, which has been amazing, and have been recognised for those projects, which was completely unexpected, but it's just kind of catapulted us into where we are now. We're currently, our peers in the industry are who we looked up to only 3 years ago, so that's quite amazing for us. In 2016, last year, we won the Australian Interior Design Award for Best Retail for our project 1888 Certified, which is a butcher. We're also both vegetarian. And this year we won the World Interiors News Awards, which is international, so we're absolutely floored by that, for Best Bar for Dead Ringer, which is in Surrey Hills, and again we took out Best Retail this time in the world, which is, we still can't quite believe, again for 1888 Certified, which is a butcher in Double Bay. Last year we also got put on the international map by winning 2 projects for WeWork, which are a kind of co-working space giant. They're one of the fastest growing businesses in the world, and we designed their first 2 sites in Sydney, one in Martin Place, which is 3,500 square metres of joinery and furniture, so it was big, and then we took on Piermont, which was 9,000 square metres, and they were both completed from start to finish in 6 months. So we've got kind of a lot of experience under our belt in a very short space of time.
So at Tom, Mark, Henry, we see being involved in the design industry as critical to our development as designers. We want to learn from our peers, and we see the involvement as being critical to that, So quickly, Kushler currently does it, and I've previously done it, tutor at UNSW, because we see learning from students as vital. They have so much to teach us, as well as teaching them. We go to industry events. We're part of the Design Institute of Australia, and we recently visited Milan for the furniture fair, which was phenomenal, and we would recommend anyone go if they get an opportunity to. So, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. And what a lovely evening in celebration of women's achievements and women in the built environment. I love the photo in the background. It reminds me of home, which is Canada, and the aurora, which can act as a metaphor for my trajectory into the built environment. It's colorful, it's winding, and a phenomenon that has happened in both the southern and northern hemispheres. I'm a city planning academic here at UNSW who started out as a junior high school teacher in physical education and English literature. When I finished my undergraduate degree, unfortunately, there were no jobs in teaching, so off I went to the local council where I discovered this fabulous new discipline called urban planning. I enjoyed the work so much that I went back to university for my master's in environmental design at the University of Calgary. And I then worked for a private consultancy for some years before I decided I needed to do a PhD at UNSW. I finished my degree on a Friday and started working here on a Monday. I haven't left since then. My current research has personal relevance. I'm studying the links between people and their attachment to different places and what that means for urban management. My most recent publication is a co-authored book with Professor Emeritus John Lang on urban squares or town plazas. He and I brought our collective knowledge of urban planning, architecture, and urban design together to present a new way to think about urban squares. After studying plazas for a few years, I can no longer just wander aimlessly through a city and enjoy it at a superficial level. I ask myself, how big is this one? Who owns it? Who's using it? Who's not using it? What are its internal design features? What shape is it? Because, of course, not all squares are square. So who's the designer? What's the instrumental function in this city? So our work presents a typology of plazas based on these very dimensions, which are relevant to other types of public spaces. We analyze squares around the world, from Times Square in New York to Trafalgar Square in London, and to Oxford Square here in Sydney, and of course the quintessential plaza in the world, Piazza San Marco in Venice. Producing vital urban squares and spaces like parks, plazas, playgrounds, or streetscapes doesn't happen by chance. It takes good design, and it is often the result of strong collaborations. If there is a chance to work together across disciplines or across sectors, we should capitalize on these opportunities. Most of the women I know and work with are wonderful collaborators, and as women and leaders in the built environment here tonight, together we can continue to increase the number of and improve the public spaces and the livability of our cities. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Catherine Hart. I started my career studying architecture, which is a long time ago now. I probably date myself as well. But the course that as I did the course, it was interesting. I thought I was going to be an architect for the rest of my life, so did my parents, and that I'd do that until I retired, until I got out into the workforce, and of course it didn't happen. And where I am now as a result of all of the things I've done across different roles and different companies, I've learnt new things in every role, and I was always conscious of the design focus whatever I was doing. After graduating, I worked with DCM, who are now JPW, on Governor Phillip Tower and Governor Macquarie Tower and One Farrer Place and the Museum of Sydney, which are probably the buildings that I walk past every day because I work in one of them now and go, wow, 25 years ago, it's a long time. I had the opportunity early on to work on site, which gave me an incredible insight into the way of building. I had a builder who told me that architects don't need to draw every little thing, which saved me a lot of time in my working forward. And it was also invaluable to get that knowledge working on a construction site. Which way? That one. I've worked in public, private and not-for-profit sectors in a variety of roles. So I've been a development manager, design manager, architect and client-side project manager, and in senior management positions in some of those areas. This slide is probably from the jobs that I'm known best for at the moment. I've had 7 years working client-side for working on QT hotels, so this is Sydney. I had Melbourne and Canberra. They were all amazing projects to work on, and you got a real feel for interiors, building, art. All were wonderful and all had their own challenges, I have to say. Of the huge number of projects I've worked on over the years, the highlights were 363 George Street, Woolloomooloo Wharf with Multiplex, and 30 the Bond for Lend-Lease along with the QT. All of the projects have given me a breadth in my knowledge of construction and design and how they work to deliver best results. My current role is Head of Design at Roberts Pizzarotti, so as Helen said, we're new. We're headed up by a female CEO and a CFO. And what that is bringing all my years of experience together to focus on how we can do things differently in the design and construct sector, so that design is a really important part of that and not value engineered out to death. I've always worked with teams of people, whether it's consultants or whether it's clients, and that's been one of the strengths that I've really enjoyed and allows me to deliver projects. So my tips for people, and I've lost the little thing. Oh, you've already gone on. Sorry. Got it. Okay, so 3 things. Know the difference between being a mentor and a sponsor and get both of them. They're both really important. The mentors will help you with your current role, and the sponsor will push you up through and support you. And throughout my career, I've benefited from those. And my other thing is to say yes to any opportunity. Just take it and run with it. Most women don't do that. And finally, network, 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 and being a director of NAWIC. I would encourage you all to join NAWIC and get involved. Thank you.
Hello everyone, I'm Aphrodite Sinefa. I have been recently appointed as Senior Research Fellow of the Faculty of the Built Environment here at UNSW, but I have started my career as a humble physicist. I have done a master's degree in France in buildings and environment, and thank you, and a PhD in urban heat island mitigation in Athens, Greece. I have a working experience in mainly European projects of over 15 years dealing with energy and environmental issues in the built environment. And I have to say that in the first years, I was usually the only woman in a consortium of more than 15 European organizations, and with the exception of Nordic countries, of course. And I'm happy to say that in the last years, I feel that this has changed a lot. So what I am known for, what my research is dealing with, is the overheating of urban areas, which affect negatively the sustainability and livability of cities. My work focuses on urban heat island mitigation, mainly on cool materials, which are materials that reflect solar radiation and stay cooler under the sun. You see here an image from Santorini, which is an island in Greece. And you can see that this technology is not a new concept, but it has been used in the vernacular architecture of many places with hot climatic conditions. I think my main achievements and what I'm mainly known for is the development of cool colored materials, which are materials that are dark in color but remain reflective and thus cooler under the sun. My key takeaway from my career is best described by a quote by Tennessee Williams that says, "Make voyages, attempt them, there is nothing else." And this, in my mind, translates as to try to take opportunities, take risks, don't be afraid to go out of your comfort zone if what you are about to do is something that you love, because this is really where the magic happens. And I can tell you the recent example of me coming to Australia. When I was offered a position here, I was very reluctant to accept it. Australia was in my mind a place with deadly creatures that want to kill you. I was afraid that my 5-year-old daughter would be internally traumatized from moving here and going to a class that she doesn't speak English. I find that my child is thriving at school. I have been recently promoted. I do what I love in the best possible environment. So please try to do the things you love and don't be afraid to try out new things. How I can help? I'm very happy to mentor students and young professionals in the subjects I work for. I have established over the years very good collaboration with European institutions, and I would be happy to use this collaboration and network to assist other women visiting Europe and other countries and working there or doing an internship or just training. And as I represent the High Performance Architecture Lab, we have the infrastructure to identify, let's say, overheating problems in urban areas. We have the expertise to propose solutions. We have the simulation tools to evaluate this solution and propose, let's say, optimized mitigation strategies to everyone. So we are happy to collaborate with the industry and companies working on urban heat island mitigation. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. My name is Min Kong. Just a little bit about my background. My background is in industrial design. I'm an industrial designer. I studied at UNSW, but I started actually with a degree in life science with biotechnology. And I had a leap to industrial design after about 2.5 years of studying life science. And to me, industrial design was like, I was like a duck to water. I really dived in. So at the end of my course, I was offered a job at LG after my internship, but I had my eyes set on a Sydney-based consultancy called Blue Sky, because Blue Sky seemed fun, young. They had designed Sydney Olympic torch, for example, and they're always kind of up and coming and on the edge, kind of designers. And so I really wanted to stay back in Sydney and wanted to work for that company. But when I had finished my degree, it was a bad time because it was at GFC, no one was hiring. If anything, the consultancies were all downsizing. So I had really tough time for about 4 months or so. I didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't know whether I was going to get a job here or not, and I really regretted turning down my position, the offer at LG. But I was also lucky enough through different contacts, I was able to do some freelance work in Singapore while I was situated here, but doing some work for Singaporean companies and also brasserie bread, so that kept me busy, not enough to support myself, obviously. And I was doing some odd internships here and there in different consultancies to get my foot in the door for free labor. And just to test the waters here. But I was very lucky because at the end of that year, I found a job at Blue Sky, and that was my dream job. I didn't think I was going to land on it, and I did. And I've been there ever since. So I'm part of the furniture now. And about 4 years ago, I started also teaching at UNSW, some design studios and major project units. Which I really enjoy because, when I come back to uni, there's that freedom to design anything you like, and I really enjoy that aspect, as well as giving back what I've also learned in my commercial experience. So that's my very simple career path. So at what I'm known for having made in the men's world. It's a very small industry, industrial design, and it's very, very male-dominant, especially when it comes to consulting. Oops, that was one slide. And I guess I'm known for my creative qualities, but also because of my science background, I believe that I've got this systemic and analytical approach to creating customer experience design, or customer experience journey, which applies to whether it be products or service design. Like, for example, we've been working for companies like McDonald's, CBA, and Qantas automated check-in system. And latest, I guess, highlight will be the ANZ's retail bank spaces, as well as their flagship store on 20 Martin Place. Keep it short. I guess my takeaway from me today will be, to trust your passion. I think, because of opportunities and lack of opportunities, I think we kind of diverse into different paths and, kind of give up on, what you really love doing. But I think let your passion be guide to what you'd like to do. Don't lose sight of the big picture. But also making, also another thing is to, making the most out of your experiences, your life experiences, because, I thought, with my science background, I always thought, I'm a little bit of a, left field, like I'm not quite there, with the rest of the cool bunch of design kids. But I think that really helped me to become who I am today, because I'm a little bit more analytical, a little bit more systemic, as well as hopefully I'm a good designer aesthetically too. So I like this quote where it says you could not prevent a thunderstorm, but you could use electricity. You could not direct the wind, but you could trim your sail so as to propel your vessel as you pleased, no matter which way the wind blew. And you know, if there are industrial designers, lady industrial designers out there, I'm happy to offer mentorship or internship at Blue Sky. Yeah, feel free to come and talk to me afterwards if you like, or email me.
Good evening, my name is Sarah Paget-Kiersgaard, and I would like to begin by acknowledging the Bedegal as the traditional custodians of the land we meet on tonight, and thank elders past and present for their contribution to this landscape. I'm a registered landscape architect and a lecturer here in landscape architecture at UNSW, and have spent most of my life in Perth, one of the most isolated capital cities in the world. It's home to about 2.2 million people with an urban development front of some 150 kilometres. It's a flat sand plain where the horizon is forever apparent. It's got poor soils, a diminishing water source, but rich in biodiversity as one of 35 biodiversity hotspots within the world. Thus, it's been a significant shift for me to come to Sydney, where the population is at least double. The metropolitan landscape exhibits a profound topographical change, and water is aplenty. I unashamedly love landscape architecture, and from my perspective, it's the rock and roll profession amongst the design professions. And my passion has been instrumental to me making my mark. As a student at UWA, I worked as a radio producer and marketing manager for Oz Stereo Perth, the equivalent of 2Day FM and Triple M Network here. I left my studies to undertake the role of breakfast producer at Triple M in Brisbane, and I remember clearly my then teacher Richard Weller saying to me, "Don't leave, you'll never come back." And my response was, "Don't worry, I love it and I will." Sure enough, 1 year later, I was back finishing off my degree before embarking on a 2.5-year stint with Jeppe Aagaard Andersen in Elsinore in Denmark. And then I returned home to work as a landscape architect for the WA Department of Environment. Together, this early professional experience was critical in enabling me to move quickly within the ranks of AILA. I have held leadership positions with AILA as the WA State President, and I'm currently in my second term on the National Board. Harnessing my early professional experience with Oz Stereo allowed me to thrive professionally because these roles developed my resilience and stretched me beyond what I initially thought was possible. Importantly, my roles within AILA have been essential in staying connected to the profession as I undertook sessional teaching, a PhD, and raised my young family. So tonight I have 2 calls to action. Firstly, I believe to be authentic landscape architects, or design professionals for that matter, we must reconcile our relationship with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. To this point, I'm looking to connect with people in this room who are elders or can connect me to elders across the Sydney metro region. I would like to work with these people in my studio and my theory courses so I can enable built environment students to begin their own journey connecting to this country. Secondly, I believe landscape architects must now scale up and begin to operate at the scale of the metropolis. My research is specifically interested in the fuzziness of the peri-urban edge, the city where the rural and urban lands meet. I can add value to transdisciplinary teams by helping articulate the spatial change occurring at this edge, and I'd like to connect with representatives from LGAs at the periphery, industry and urban ecologists, as well as with other landscape architects to identify and develop meaningful solutions for people and nature within this dynamic cultural and ecological interface.
Hi, I'm Abby Galvin. I came here directly from a meeting with a whole group of men who thought it was highly amusing that I was coming to an event where 20 women were going to be limited to speaking for 3 minutes each. I've had a relatively sort of conventional career as an architect. I graduated from UWA in '92. As a fresh-faced young architect, I worked in WA for what was considered a large practice in Perth. I then moved to Sydney, where I worked very consciously for a small practice, as I was particularly interested in getting as much experience sort of on site, as many young architects are, and that was with Ian Moore Architects, soon to be Ian Moore and Tina England. I then had a bit of a shift. It was only a sort of a small blip, where I worked as a curator of public programs for the Museum of Sydney and was involved in the setting up of Sydney Open, which has now been an annual event since sort of 1995. And then in 96, I joined a small Brisbane practice, or a small Sydney practice, which was based initially in Brisbane, called Blyvola. And Blyvola were 15 people when I began. In 2004, I became a principal there, and it has grown sort of incrementally over the years. And now, and this was a complete mistake that it looks like a Target, and now we've got a team of almost 300 people. In amongst that sort of traditional career, I've done a whole series of things that are involved within the profession, from being a chapter counsellor to working, doing some tutoring at universities, being involved with the Institute in writing policies, state visiting panels from the board, being members of juries, etc., which has been a sort of a fantastic adjunct to some of the work that I do. Essentially, I suppose I'm known for being involved in projects over my career, and many of those projects are ranging, and it started, one of them was the Webster Building here at UNSW, and you can see the state of the drawings that we used to do back then, through to what ended up becoming a lot of interior and workplace projects, which was sort of a mass acceleration into understanding large projects over a brief period of time for a young architect, through to projects that range from the public realm, health, defence, education, master planning, some fantastic collaborations along the way, and both with other architects and, of course, within my own practice. Through to projects, many of which on site, and currently working predominantly in Hong Kong on projects that are at a sort of a mega scale, so a hospital of 500,000 square metres. I think in terms of what I can do to help is really to give advice. I think the largest discriminator that we find as architects is essentially children, as wonderful as they are. And I would advise to sort of surround yourself with incredibly understanding and forward-thinking people. So my two colleagues, amongst many colleagues, Bill Dowser and James Gross, were always very supportive and as inclusive as they possibly could be when it came to me having children, and supporting and putting forward policies such as paid maternity leave within the practice. And then importantly, find the right partner in life, not in business, who considers raising of children as an absolutely joint responsibility. Thank you.
I'm Catherine Bridge, and I'm the Associate Dean Research at the Faculty of the Built Environment. I'm the first woman in that position. So hopefully I will press the button and I can talk. So Bridge by name and Bridge by nature. And my journey is a journey from Malaysia to Australia to the UK and back. And when we look at the picture, you can see I'm building. And when we're thinking about building and growing, and we're thinking about diversity, we're thinking about a whole scale from children to older adults. And in terms of my journey, I started out as a health professional. I did and I taught at the University of Sydney for 17 years in that area. I have a master's in engineering and a PhD in architecture. Why am I so passionate about the built environment? Because at a population level, that is the most effective way to actually improve health, well-being and quality of life. And that is what I'm utterly committed to. So I want to be known for evidence-based design for human diversity. What most people don't realise is that basically some limitation of function, whether it's temporary or permanent, is in fact something that happens to all of us at some time in our lives. And if we aspire not to be a child but to be an adult, eventually, if we're lucky, we'll become an older adult. It's actually over 1 billion people in the world who are impacted in this way. It's the world's largest minority. So in terms of the things that I'm passionate about and the things that I want to be known for, I've been running the Home Modification Information Clearinghouse, which underpins both the National Disability Insurance Scheme and aged care. It's funded by the Commonwealth Government and has been run continuously since 2002. It provides the evidence base for making decisions about things such as, what can I do to my home so I can stay connected to my community? One of the things we released very recently was a do-it-yourself app, which followed on from a number of years of research and included access to the till data from Bunnings. We were able to show that in the state of New South Wales, that in fact is over $33 million a year. So, and in terms of home modifications, that can actually improve quality of life by a very large amount. In terms of what I want to be able to do is to the 5 C's. It's communicate, create, connect, and capture. And anyone that wants to join me on that research journey, I invite you to come and talk to me. Thank you very much.
Hi. I was brought up on the Gold Coast, very undesigner place to be brought up. Went to University of Queensland, studied journalism and politics, then had a complete change of heart because education was free back then, and went to Sydney to study interior design at UTS. In 1992, I met these two people, Peter Geyer and Sandy Geyer, and from there my life radically changed. Peter and Sandy ran a very Melbourne-centric practice, Geyer, and they ran a very, very makeshift office in Sydney, which was embarking on the largest workplace in Australia at the time, Bankers Trust. Peter was just the most incredible mentor to me. He managed to drag me over the next 10 to 15 years into every conversation, every pitch, every executive boardroom, every design review, every project virtually that we did. We scaled maybe 40 to 50 large-scale workplace projects together. In all that time, I had this very calm, quiet and beautiful voice in my ear, which was from Sandy Geyer, who mentored me on how to handle Peter for that long. And in doing so, probably equipped me with the right amount of skill to navigate chaos, challenging people, a sense of challenge that came from a very blokey bloke, and really set me up to deal with ambiguity and intrigue and, I guess, the eccentricities of my many clients that followed. So really, I guess, for many of us, the GFC radically changed the way in which I worked, and we, as Gaia, embarked into learning space design. Really, at that point in time, I now had my own 2 children. It became very, very apparent to me that in a world that was automated, that children and young students really had to equip themselves with a whole bunch of new skills, which was really around problem solving and creativity and being entrepreneurial and embracing a lifetime of learning, and they need the spaces and places to be able to do that. shoot forward from the GFC days to today and working with the likes of Barangaroo and International Towers on creating and curating communities is very much a similar thread and ethos, I suppose, to what we've done in learning space design. It's really about creating communities that have meaning, that are socially aware, that are innovative and are able to create new things together on a learning path. I would say to all women in the built environment, please, it's so important to join a company that is inclusive, that has mentorship and diversity and inclusion and professional development as absolutely central to its DNA. It's going to be a hard slog if you don't join like-minded people who really support you in what you do. I would say if you do work in architecture or interior design, a great place to learn is from your clients. And we have, through the great network of fantastic top-tier clients that we do have at Gaia, been able to be exposed to a number of amazing women who are doing incredible things in their own industry, and they offer a lot of information, I suppose, in terms of what you might learn and how you might advance yourself. I really think it's important to have life raft partners, to have people outside of your work really who will give you perspective on what you're doing and to remind you of what's possible. Finally, I just wanted to say that I personally take calls all the time because I offer myself up to help young women and women in leadership too to advance their careers and to give advice on the industry. And I think it's something which is important to be able to set aside time and a mental space to be able to do that. So I encourage everybody to try and do the same thing. But thank you very much. Looking forward to talking to you further.
Good evening, my name's Phoebe Pape. I'm currently the Head of Landscape Architecture at FJMT. I've been there since last October, so the corporate professional world of the real life is a new thing for me. I've always been fascinated by the beauty and intricate balance and delicate nature of Mother Earth and our natural environment. But finding my way to landscape architecture as a profession, although in the end it was a natural destined path for me, it took a little while for me to realise it. I remember when I was at university to begin with, I was actually studying to be an art teacher. And I really wanted to do pure art, but I got an art scholarship, so I thought I'll do education, and I hated it. And I went to a dinner party at a friend's house one night, and a girl was there who was doing her thesis in landscape architecture, and she was sitting at this huge board, drawing this most incredibly complicated drainage and levels plan, contours and lines and numbers, and I looked at it and I thought, how on the earth could anybody ever figure that out or do that? It was just mind-blowing to me, and I thought there's no way I was ever going to do that. I then went to Sydney and started doing graphic design at an old school down in the Rocks called Schlitto Design School. And one day the colour teacher didn't turn up. And I'd grown up in Canberra in a very sort of rural environment. And here I was in Sydney, Macquarie Street, masses of traffic, pollution, crazy. And the teacher wasn't there, so I went across to the art gallery, walked through the domain, had this beautiful experience of the grass and the trees, and went to the art gallery, came back and hit Macquarie Street. And I went, I'm going to be a landscape architect. It just hit me like that. And that day I rang up my dad and I said, I'm coming back to Canberra, I'm going back to uni to get into landscape architecture. And they kept on saying, no, you don't understand, you can't start that course now. And I went, well, I'm sorry, but I'm coming. And I just didn't take no for an answer. I turned up and started doing it. So I've always been rather pig-headed and defiant in what I wanted to do. And that's basically how I have continued to do my practice. So for me, everything on Earth has a connection and an origin back to Mother Nature. And as humans, we are intricately woven into a web. Oops, I'm sorry, I think I've... Did I press that? Okay. And we're intricately connected and affected by Mother Nature. I believe that ultimately our happiness and contentment is related to our ability to actually connect back to our actual nurturer. So the Amazon River, what a marvellous illustration of majestic beauty. I've never been one very good to compromise. But that really has held me in good stead, because I can honestly say that I've never designed or built a project that I'm not proud to put my name to, and I've always followed my ethos. I've rejected work that I didn't believe in, and I've worked really hard on the projects that I've loved, and I've followed my passion, and albeit in a rather pig-headed way sometimes. My ideas of landscape architecture is about this connection back to nature really holds very close to my heart. I really believe that we're slowly and silently disconnecting and destroying our lifeblood, and we're turning our back on our true nurturer. So my practice of landscape architecture has always been to respect the earth and her ways, and to integrate a sense of balance and an essence of Mother Nature, and integrate her lessons into designs and landscapes that afford emotional comfort. Because places where one is human and places where one wants to be. By having this very strong attitude, in a way, this has allowed me the time and space to both bring up a family and to continue to establish a level in my profession of the place that I am today. So I never actually, I never thought that I'd not be a mother, and I never thought I would not practice landscape architecture. I just never really thought about how I would actually do that. This is a picture of my 3 kids and myself. They all say we all have the same face. Poor kids. My son has just gone to Norway to complete his Masters in Architecture. My older daughter, she's a site engineer on the light rail, and the youngest one's still at school. But what a fabulous attribute to their mum, as a mentor, I could say they're one of my best sort of students, I guess. But as far as the way that I ran my practice, I integrated my kids into my practice. They came to site with me, they did my drawings, built models, they came to site meetings. They were part of my practice. That's why they're up there on that picture. And it's only been now that they've grown up and they've got their own lives that I've actually now gone back out into the professional world and worked for a big firm, because I've always had my own practice. I'm actually rather surprised sometimes by the extent of my reputation. People know me who I've never know, and I get quite embarrassed by it sometimes. But I think a lot of that was to do with the archery park that we did some 20 years ago. There are a lot of considerations, contamination, water consumption, energy consumption, all those sorts of things of 20 years ago. But now we are really considering far greater challenges in our design work. Climate change, overpopulation, and the enormous strain that's been placed on our earth. And I think with new innovative ways we have to use to sustain and nourish our landscapes and our environment, new challenges using new technologies. It's been a journey, and it continues to be a journey, and I think with the new position that I'm in, it's fantastic that we can actually have the opportunity to embrace these new technologies and actually put them into practice. It's been a struggle, but the words I'd say to take away from this is that ask other women to tell them their story, because you're not alone. Discover what your true beliefs are. Decide what matters to you. Be passionate about it, and above all, don't compromise. We are all responsible. Don't give up.
So it's a privilege to be here tonight among so many wonderful women and listen to these wonderful stories. Amazing. My name is Oya Demirbilek. I'm an associate professor in industrial design, and I have been an academic for 26 years. So when people ask me, do you have children? I say, no, but I have 2 PhDs. And I forgot to press this, Brady. And in Turkish, oya means a special kind of embroidery, mostly flowers that you can find around scarves, hence the decorations on my slides. Before coming to Australia, I lived in 7 different countries, mostly in Europe. And even before I graduated, I was working as a freelance designer in a ceramic company in Switzerland. And after graduating, I was very lucky to be teaching at Art Center College of Design Europe, a prestigious school in La Tour de Paix. And I also have a few design awards along the way. And my research is in exploring and finding ways to make old age on a physical and emotional level more comfortable for all. And a big part of this involves working collaboratively with old people as co-designers. So 3 things I'm known for. The first one is my geometric jewelry designs. The second one is my role in leading and really developing the first massive open online course for the built environment entitled Re-Enchanting the City, which we offered twice already on FutureLearn successfully with close to 9,000 people enrolled. And the third one, of course, are my co-design sessions with old people. So what am I interested in really tonight? I'm interested in research collaborations. So if you work with old people, or if you like to involve them in a design project, I would love to hear about it, and I would love to collaborate. And for the younger women in the audience, I have 3 tips. The first one is about people. It's all about the people you encounter in life, really, or you seek. So I recommend that you seek informal mentors whenever you can. And when you can, repay it back by being a mentor yourself. The second one is trust. Trust in yourselves, because if you don't, nobody else will. The third one is persistence. Good things happen to people who are patient and persistent. And that quote sums it all for me. It says, "Many receive advice, few profit by it." So I will give you a homework. Yep, I'm an academic. So next time someone gives you an advice, a bit of advice, stop and think about it. Did you seek for that advice? If yes, you will most probably listen to it and you will benefit from it. If you did not seek that advice, will you choose to listen to it? Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Caroline Pidcock, and thank you for organising such a wonderful evening. This slide kind of gives a bit of a background to things I've been doing over the last number of years, since I lucked upon architecture at the University of Sydney and then sought out particular practices that I really wanted to work for and learn from until I started my own practice 25 years ago this year. I then found the book Green Architecture and decided that was going to be my a direction forward, and that then took me in a funny way to the University of Newcastle, where I taught for 5 years. And as the only full-time female member of staff at the time, I was appointed to Academic Senate as the university was trying to de-blokify the place a little. And that was the first time I'd ever been on a committee ever. And it kind of led to a life of committees that was totally unintended, but there you go. So this is from my practice, my work, my webpage, and it kind of gives you an understanding of the extent of different involvements I've had over that time, and some of the roles I've had, including being the second only female president in the Institute of Architects in New South Wales. Deborah Deering followed me, and we've had no more females in New South Wales since, which is unfortunate. I was the first and only female president of the Australian Sustainable Built Environment Council, and hopefully that will change in the future. And I've been involved in some great things like the Living Future Institute Australia and Carriageworks and a number of other roles, which has been a great and important learning thing for me, and lots of projects, over 800 projects that I've been involved with, and my own prefab company, which didn't go so well, and a Resource 88 place for sustainable practice in Redfern, which did go well, but it came to an end. So, what do I want to be known for? Actually, I am in a state of complete transition at the moment. I'm in the process of closing my office so that I can operate in a far more flexible and, I suppose, urgent way of... I think the issue of sustainability of this earth is really at a very critical point, and I want to be able to really be able to accelerate how I can assist create an abundant living future. And I think these are the guiding design principles, and I really think that having a biophilic basis to all we do is critically important in realising that. What does that look like? I'm not sure. I'm in the process of finding that out. I'm spending the rest of this year sort of closing my practice, having a holiday overseas and a long overdue sabbatical. So what happens next year? I'm not sure, but I'm I think finding out is actually one of the most important things to do, and then to work out how to act on it. These are some ideas that I'm thinking of how I can take the wealth of experience I've developed over the last 25 years and sort of help different people. And I would be more than delighted to hear from you, although I might not be super active in pursuing that for the rest of this year, but very much so next year. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Fatima Aminpour. I'm a PhD student in the Faculty of Built Environment, and my background is in architecture. You might find my presentation slightly different from others because it focuses in one of the important findings of my PhD, which is quite relevant to this event. My PhD is about understanding the physical environment which eliminates gender disparity in school grounds. Australia has a democratic education, but unfortunately, the design of outdoor school environments enable boys while constraining girls. Currently, Australian school grounds are replete with traditional courts, which are dominated by boys, and the importance of spaces which can support the richness of girls' activities is overlooked. These are the examples of the grass areas in my case studies. How do you think that boys and girls use these areas? I observed girls competing in running races and practicing gymnastics on these areas, but once the boys started playing soccer, girls retreated to the edges. It turns out that girls cannot take advantage of these areas as much as boys because they are intimidated by the boys' activities. Within the group discussions, girls frequently refer to boys' activities as disruptive, but boys rarely complain about girls' activities. I asked girls to walk me through spaces where they chose to play, and I asked them why. Guess what? They chose in between spaces, less crowded and interfered with by boys. This is an important message for architects and landscape architects because in-between spaces are not officially designed. They sit between larger areas of school grounds, usually dominated by boys. They offer a level of privacy and control that is not achievable in other areas. So my study is not only about understanding what's wrong with the official spaces that we design, but also what's right with the in-between spaces that we don't design. It indicates that we need to change the way we think about the school design, and we need to value in-between spaces, often overlooked by the school designers. They play a significant role in children's experience of equality, which is one of the aims of a democratic education. So where to from here? Do you think that the design of spaces with the environmental qualities of in-between spaces guarantee their functionality for children's use? It may not, because in-between spaces are not designed in advance, they are discovered by children. If I can get some support, I plan to further research schools which contain areas officially designed, but with the environmental characteristics of in-between spaces. We need to know how much design we should provide for children, Or to put it somewhat differently, how we can offer them opportunities so that they can create their own environments. So if we want to promote gender equality within the educational institution, let's start with the design of outdoor school environments. Thank you.
Hi there, my name's Annie Tennant. I would like to also acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we gather and to pay my respects to their elders past and present. I'd also like to pay my respects to other Aboriginal Torres Strait Islanders who are here this evening. So I grew up in Ku-ring-gai country. The smells, the landforms and the streams infused my psyche. From the age of 8, I knew that I wanted to be an architect, and it was probably because I loved both maths and art, and Mum said, hey, you should be an architect. So I did my architecture degree here at the University of New South Wales, and I was deeply involved in student politics. I was president of the Architecture Club. I was an editor of Tharunka. I was also warned by a professor, and I quote, that if I didn't stop this suffragette bullshit, I would be failed in design studio. That was a long time ago, and I really hope things have changed. I went on to do a master's in urban design and landscape from the University of California, Berkeley. I worked for the government architect, for Walter Hood, for Hassel, and then I joined Lend-Lease in 2004 as an urban design manager. From 2005, I was involved in NAWIC as well, so please join and get on the committees, and was president in 2007. I became Lend-Lease's first global diversity and inclusion manager, and in 2008, I wrote the first business case and strategy for diversity in the design and construction industry in Australia. Now I'm responsible for delivering the social and environmental sustainability initiatives for Barangaroo South, including $20 million worth of art and cultural initiatives and strategies that will make this Australia's first large-scale carbon-neutral precinct. So, what am I about? What am I known for? I'm a connector, apparently. I'm someone who adds a touch of humanity and occasional humour to work. I was happy to hear this feedback recently, as I believe it's important to bring your whole self to work, to be honest about what is important to you and to be clear and articulate about your values. I'm known as being a trusted partner in place design for culture and art and someone who's genuine. But how would I like to be known? I'd like to be known for meaningful engagement with the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities with whom I work, for learning from their determination, respectful dialogue, to bring cultural sensibility to the design of our cities. What I didn't learn at school or university was the way to respect and work with the 60,000 years worth of histories, laws and knowledge embedded in this land. This is our opportunity and it's our obligation. I'd also like to be known for leaving behind communities that are stronger and more resilient than before, places that support healthier lifestyles and nurture creativity. And finally, I'd like to be known for bringing some of the best public art to Sydney, so watch this space. I can't tell you any more at the moment, unfortunately. Talk to me later and give me a gin and tonic and maybe I'll tell you. So what are some of the things that I do to support women, or I think we should be doing to support women? I speak up when I see something's not right. I'm known as being quite blunt at work, which can be good. It can be problematic sometimes. I believe in creating opportunities where I can help make things happen. So making connections, making introductions, talking a lot, and trying to understand people, what drives them, what's their point of view, and what do they want out of life. Not what they necessarily want out of their career, what do they want out of life. We don't all want the same things, so one's advice, one's counsel needs to be relevant and appropriate. I was taught that I could do anything, and it's only now in my very, very, very early middle age that I am questioning this. My personal 20-year struggle against patriarchal thinking and structures, my struggle to be 100% present for my children and yet still deliver on my challenging job, my struggle to work out what my path is for the next 20 years. These are things that I think about a lot and I'm happy to talk to anyone about. I have always wanted to make a difference, but as I'm reminded often, it's not only about me, it's about all of us. Inspired by the worlds of the Yolngu elder who we spent the weekend with at Gama, I look around this room of shiny, bright-faced men and women, and I see people who can support and help each other to make our communities and cities better, safer, more livable, and more connected to place and country. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alessandra, and I'm an associate lecturer at University of New South Wales. I'm here tonight to talk about biomimicry in a built environment and a little bit about myself, obviously. I started with a passion for architecture, for sculpture, ancient civilizations, and math. And that's why I went into a bachelor in architecture, and then I realized that it was a little bit more about something bigger. So I went into a master in urban planning. After that, I decided that my passion and interest for adventure wasn't just there. So I decided to go into emerging technologies and studying a little bit more about how to apply math and algorithms inside building. So I traveled a lot, Argentina, obviously Italy, I'm from Italy, France, UK, Australia. I lived, worked, studied, and taught there. Who am I today? Today I'm someone that tries to recognize patterns in nature. They can be patterns about neurological behavior when we approach the city, so how people understand and perceive the city. They can be patterns about how nature is able to survive with extreme risks. They can be about how nature creates mutations and therefore variation in everything there is, and also about variation created on repetition of similar parts. All these, it's translating into reduction of stress in spatial navigation, so trying to understand how to plan for people and how to create a movement of people that is more pleasant. And I know that because I lived in UK, and London especially is quite stressful. And then smart cities with resilience to nature, so how to be able to cohabit with nature and not just plan over nature. And meaningful anomalies, what do I mean by that? It's not just about repetition. Sometimes randomness and mutation can give rise to something special. And finally, how to be able to create from material performance, so just using what we have and being able to understand all the limits and constraints of it, and as well the strength and the possibilities. So what I'm here for, what can I say to people that are here tonight? Never give up, as someone has already said, and especially follow your instinct. I am just in the middle of my path, and I hope it's going to give me more and more adventures and more different things to do.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Alison Heller, Manager of Social Strategy at the City of Sydney. I'd like to acknowledge the Gadigal of the Eora Nation on whose land we're meeting this evening and pay my respects to elders past and present. So my journey has been an interesting one. It's taken me from Dubbo to Moscow and 10 years in London and now back in Sydney, which is a really incredible city to be in. I think right now there's a lot of change and transition. There's fantastic opportunities, particularly if you work in the built environment. It's a very rapidly changing environment, changing time. So I originally studied urban planning, town planning here at UNSW. I went to London the day after I graduated and became a journalist. So it was something I'd always wanted to do, and I'd been working a bit in urban planning, and then I saw a job advertised in a paper that was looking for a journalist in a property magazine, and I just went for it and amazingly got the job. And that changed my career, and I had an amazing 10 years working as a journalist, became the editor of a property magazine over in London, and came back to Sydney in 2008. At the time, I was thinking what to do next, what kind of career path to go into. I was thinking about communications, and policy was an obvious kind of choice. During my time in London, I developed a real passion for how the built environment and urban regeneration could really transform people's lives. There was a lot of focus at the time over there on major estate renewal. Big developers were really looking at what are the social aspects of renewal and how can we deliver social regeneration. So that moved me over into social policy, where I'm now working at the City of Sydney. I worked in consulting previous to that, really learnt the ropes in social policy at Urbis and a lot of the tools and methodologies and research methods, and then moving over into my own practice for 2 years and then the job at the city now. So it's been an interesting journey, and I think I would say to follow your passions, and others have said this, but I think you'll find what your deep passions are and you can weave those into your career path, which will probably take many paths. In terms of what am I known for, what I'd like to be known for, I'm really excited that the City of Sydney now has a social sustainability policy, and that has transitioned the way local government thinks about what social sustainability is, and that's beyond sort of responding purely to people in the community who face barriers or disadvantage. It's about a whole of community approach and what we all can deliver to make our cities more sustainable, socially as well as environmentally and economically. Professionally, I understand I'm known to be collaborative, and I think that is something that is such a benefit. It brings so many benefits to share knowledge and understanding. People will reciprocate that. So I would recommend building really strong, trusted networks of friends and associates along your career path. My other key takeaways, I think, is always act with integrity. See your career as a very long-term game, which it is. Your reputation is everything, and every step along that journey is about integrity and making decisions that come from the right place and doing your best, essentially. So I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Libby Gallagher. I'm a landscape architect and I'm a sessional lecturer here at the University of New South Wales. I have worked for the last 20 years and I've been very fortunate to work primarily in the public domain, and I've worked internationally as well as locally. I've worked on waterfront projects, squares, streets, great public spaces and parks. I've been very fortunate in my career, but I want to share with you something that happened to me 6 years ago. 6 years ago, I started to really fundamentally question how we as design professionals can deal with the fundamental challenge of our age, the issue of climate change. I decided at that point in my career to leave my job, full-time job, to sign up to do a doctorate and to become a student again. And I spent 4 years sitting in a dark room, learning statistics, trying to understand scientific methodology, to really try and grapple with how we can retrofit our public domain in particular to address climate change. And one of the things I found was really surprising, but also incredibly obvious. I found that it's our streets, it's our street trees that are the fundamental agents of adaptation and climate change. This is one of my favourite pictures. It's actually of the Tree of Knowledge that used to be located down in Woolloomooloo, a tree that actually has weathered many changes in the built fabric around it, also weathered completely reconstruction of the street corridor right through the middle of it. But it was a place where people used to gather in the community. They used to gather. It's a place of amenity. That tree offers solace, space, and room to breathe. And what I really found in my research, obviously, was that trees matter. The data was telling me this, and I wanted to share that with my colleagues, but I also wanted to share that with the wider community. So I just embarked on a strategy developed in consultation with a great community consultation expert, Sarah Riley, and developed a method called Cool Streets, which is designed to empower local communities to cool the planet one street at a time. What we did was combine the scientific methodology with an engagement strategy that allowed people to be able to share in and make an active choice about the design of their streets and their street trees. We were very fortunate to partner with Blacktown Council, who were willing to go on that journey with us. This is one of the youngest residents already taking ownership of her tree, which was planted last year. What we're really looking for, and what I'd love to hear from tonight, is anybody who's interested in piloting this approach in other places. We're very keen to trial this in different locations across Sydney and around Australia. And what I want to share with you is two key things that I've learnt in this process. Firstly, that humble, everyday things, the things that we take for granted, can be the most powerful agents for change. Secondly, that loosening the reins as a designer and sort of collaborating with colleagues and also the community can actually result in amazing outcomes. And finally, I just want to leave you with my ethos that I hope to use for the rest of my life, that the true meaning of life is to plant trees under whose shade you do not expect to sit. Thank you very much.
Hello everyone, my name is Mariam Goucher. I'm the Director of Architecture here at UNSW. I studied architecture and then went on to do a PhD in architectural history. And I love architecture. My daughter thinks my obsession with architecture is borders on a disorder. So tonight, to give you a glimpse into me as a person, my personal history, as well as what motivates my research, I've selected 3 moments from my life, really influential moments, and I hope they talk to both my personal experience and also my research ambitions. This is Tehran in 1978, in the uprising that is now known as the Iranian Revolution. I was about 8 years old then. And the monument that you see in the background is now called the Azadi Tower, and it was constructed by the Shah as a symbol of his power and celebration of the monarchy, and within 6 years of its construction, it became the ground for this mass-scale uprising in Iran, which toppled his regime. In my research, I'm really interested in the junction between architecture, politics, and identity. And I look for the relationship between architecture and the city and the ways in which they can support or undermine politics and structures of power. This is 1983, only weeks after I arrived in Australia as a young migrant with my family. And the image you see down below the Opera House is a mural which was painted in celebration of Australia's 10th birthday anniversary. And I was a student in an intensive language school at the time, and I was asked to represent the school in this project, which was directed as a massive community art project. And I was one of the high school students to paint one of the balloons on the mural with my own statement of cultural identity and visual input. The first letter in English that I received, which came to the migrant hostel that my family lived at the time, was a postcard memorial of this mural with a letter from UNSW with a very moving statement about how profoundly moving he found the whole project. So it's a very quintessentially 1980s story for me. This is the Parliament building in Dhaka, which is the subject of my PhD thesis, where I gained my training as a researcher. It's designed by the American architect Louis Kahn, and I think my interest in politics, culture, and architecture comes together in this project, where I looked at how Louis Kahn adjusted and translated his ideas as he moved from Philadelphia to Dhaka, and the cultural and political circumstances for that and their impact. I'd like to finish with a message from my current position as the Director of Architecture and invite everyone who's interested in teaching with us as sessional staff to please come and talk to me. I think institutions like architecture are invested with political agency and also ethical responsibility. And at UNSW, we're really motivated to extend our reach within the profession and, importantly, reach gender equity in our sessional staff. And we need your help to achieve that. Thank you.
I'm very moved and humbled by the personal stories tonight. Thank you, Helen, for sharing and making this happen. As the daughter of an engineer and a psychologist/social worker, I found architecture as the obvious profession that would help me channel my passions for making things and improving people's lives. So early on in my career as an architect, I found that I actually wanted to work on the in-between spaces, that I wasn't really that interested in necessarily just the singular building. So I studied architecture at Melbourne University, and after practicing on singular buildings in a very, very male-oriented practice, I started to dabble in the art world and in the fashion world, and I actually set up a millinery business in a laneway in Melbourne and got distracted from architecture. But I did find my way back. My millinery became unwearable. After practicing architecture and really realising that I was some sort of different kind of architect, I found my way to the United States. I was really keen on studying urban design, and at that point in time there were no professional degrees in Australia where I could actually follow that course. So I took myself off to America, and I studied at Harvard University and did a master's. Now, despite my visible keenness here in my kindergarten photo, I soon learnt that the practice of architecture and city building in particular was not a solo vocation, but one of constant collaboration. So what am I known for, or what have I been doing? So for the last 16 years or so, I've been very focused in Sydney on the transformation of our city. I've been particularly focused on the work we are doing in Sydney to transform the livability of our city, to transform Sydney as the car-based city to a city designed around people. And in that process of transformation, I've become very involved in the kind of multidisciplinary or transdisciplinary practice, working with artists and designers and scientists and environmentalists, a whole range of people, and the way we will transform and we are transforming our city. And I've been particularly focused on the kind of revealing the invisible stories of our Indigenous people and bringing that to the fore, and that recognition that they so deserve as we move and shape our city. Prior to my time at the City of Sydney, I was the design director for the Sydney 2000 Olympic Games. Actually, at the time, living in America, I said to my soon-to-be husband, I'm never coming back to Australia, only if I get to work on the Olympic Games being the design director. And it actually happened. And working on the Olympic Games was an incredible privilege, the most incredible team of people, the most collaborative project I've ever worked on, and the can-do attitude has something that's shaped who I am today. So what are my takeaways? Well, firstly, cities are very messy things, and working in the field of city shaping requires incredible perseverance, flexibility, tenacity, and the ability to work collaboratively, to strategise, to untangle, all in the effort to shape the future of our cities. So whether we're shaping the city at the macro scale or district by district, or sometimes, as we all do, square metre by square metre, and even some days millimetre by millimetre, the built environment needs our constant attention. And it's that dedication that we put to the task that will ensure that we nurture the future of our cities and provide that sustenance for our daily lives. And I guess I can't reinforce that you can't underestimate the small things we do in our cities and what profound impact they can have on our lives. My final takeaway is a comment that was given to me many years ago by a woman in Sydney, and she said, Bridget, life has many chapters, just always be prepared to open the book for the next chapter. So I leave you with that, which has been a profoundly important message for me. Thank you.
And yes, I am the last speaker. I too would like to acknowledge that we meet tonight on Aboriginal land. And I'm Siobhan Toohill, and I started out in architecture and urban design like many of the speakers we've heard tonight, and indeed I taught here for many years. Now I'm an innie, and I'm married to an outie. So back in the mid-90s, I went from architecture school to small practice to starting a master's in urban design to teaching and consulting to working in government. And then I went innie. I dived into the inside. I stepped into the world of property development and construction, land lease, and then Stockland, and now banking at Westpac, where I lead sustainability, social impact, and Indigenous engagement. I love the dark side. I'm passionate about creating change from within and the ripple effect. And these include Australia's first Green Star workplace. In fact, Abby was involved in that. Green Star Communities, the world's most sustainable property company, and then to the world's most sustainable bank. A workforce that is 4% Indigenous. That's parity, and that's enormously exciting. We no longer bank payday lenders. Delivered this year a very significant climate policy and also human rights policy. Backing social enterprises, creating hundreds of jobs for vulnerable Australians, and a scholarship backing those with the drive to shape Australia. It is amazing the change that you can create from within. It takes time, it's hard, it's about building great teams because you can't do it on your own, and it's enormously rewarding. Now, I'd like to be known for judgment. It's about knowing when to push and when to pull back. And in both directions, that really takes courage. And it's about patience and persistence. And it is really knowing when to speak up and when to stay quiet and when to find those moments of creating change. And yes, that really is me on the trapeze. And being present, asking questions, and be willing to be asked. Being bold and asking those hard questions has actually landed me 2 jobs. Deborah Deering will say yes to one of those. She answered one of those tough questions. And I believe in having coffee often. And people I regard to be mentors, lots of coffees with people I regard to be mentors, they don't know that, don't tell them that. And then coffee with people I believe have the potential, that's paying it forward. 8 a.m, 3 mornings a week. And I believe in being present and being part of the continuum and connecting people. And I do that also through hosting lots of talks as well. And why? What's my purpose? Well, it's about me as a whole person, as a parent and an engaged member of my community, and it's about tomorrow. It's about future generations to come, and I think that ultimately motivates us all. Thank you.
Well, before I say another thing, what an amazing group of women. What a big picture focus all of them have to change the world and make an impact in their own way. So before I say anything more, can we just give them all another round of applause? And now I want to introduce a couple of announcements, because out of small seeds, big things grow. And last year, in 2016, Adjunct Professor Lucy Turnbull, a self-described urbanist and, as you would know, Chief Commissioner of the Greater Sydney Commission, established a PhD scholarship for women in the built environment to celebrate this event and to develop the career and leadership potential of one lucky woman, and another next year. And so now I'd like to welcome Lucy to the stage to announce the first recipient of the Turnbull Women in Built Environment Scholarship.
Right, just 1 second. I've got to pull up her bio. I thought that Helen was going to give us her bio, so just 1 second. Well, can I say that it's wonderful to be here and to be inspired by so many extraordinary women, many of whom I know and have worked with. So it's terrific to see their contributions and their efforts and their great success celebrated here tonight. And it's particularly wonderful to be here to announce the first recipient of the Turnbull Foundation Women in the Built Environment Scholarship. But before I do that, I would like to briefly say a few words about how important I think celebrating women in the built environment is. And I give Helen full congratulations for the amazing job that she does in actually bringing us all together. It is really quite spectacular that she does that. Now, I've had, a lot of people have said they've had, if you like, flexible and responsive careers. I'm definitely one of those people. I started as a lawyer and then an investment banker, but I was actually very, very shaped by the places that I learnt in. And one of them was the law school in Phillip Street in Sydney, which was without doubt the most depressing place to learn anything. I'm amazed I ever qualified. For a start, all the lecture theatres were downstairs in the basement, and guess what? I'm claustrophobic. So that to me was like a total nightmare, right? So as I said, I'm very surprised I ever graduated. I actually responded by getting a job in the city and being a paralegal, so I didn't have to spend all my time underneath in the darkness. And then, so I learnt the power, the negative power of bad design very closely. And then I actually went on to do an MBA at Sydney University, and that taught me, at New South Wales University up the road there, at the AGSM, which is now gone. And that wasn't a great piece of public architecture, but it was a huge improvement on the law school. It actually had sunlight. So it really tuned me into the importance of sunlight when you're actually working and trying to learn things, and the importance of sunlight in public spaces too, which is something I've been very interested in ever since. Now, I think that women in leadership positions have a huge obligation to support other women, and that's why what Helen's doing is so important. I'm very glad to say that the Greater Sydney Commission not only has a female Chief Commissioner and gender equity amongst our commissioners, but we also have a female CEO, and the vast majority of people on the next layer down of the organisation are women too, and a lot of them are actually women who live in Western Sydney and for whom working in Parramatta is totally convenient. And I cannot tell you how talented and inspiring the women I work with at the GSC are. They are really an amazing group of women. So I've been inspired by good design, and Malcolm and I have established the Turnbull Foundation some time ago. The good thing is that everybody involved in the Turnbull Foundation are feminists, including our daughter Daisy, who did gender studies as a minor when she was at university, and Malcolm's been a feminist inspired by his very strong academic feminist mother. And so it was a very simple decision when Helen approached us to support this scholarship to do that. And so it gives me great pleasure to announce that Kathy Smith is the winner of tonight's award. She is a spectacular academic, and I won't give all her citations, but she's a spectacular architecture academic, and she's now based at the University of Newcastle, where she works in Renew Newcastle, and now it's become Renew Australia. And she's particularly interested in the boundaries between community-led intervention, positive intervention in public spaces, and the balance between that and institutional intervention, which is something which really fascinates me. So, Kathy, what a great recipient. Congratulations.
Thank you. So thank you, Dr. Turnbull. Thank you to the faculty of the Built Environment for this amazing opportunity at a really key moment in my career trajectory, but also a transitional moment, which is something I think we've heard about a lot tonight. It's been an amazing experience to hear everyone's narratives, and in particular the offers of support, because I really do believe that mentoring, collaboration are the future for our disciplines if we want to see innovation and change for men and women alike, but particularly inside of the birthplace of the built environment disciplines, which I believe is here at the university. So as Lucy mentioned, my project is that I'm going to focus on with the scholarship is about critically unpacking this interface between grassroots urbanism or community-focused initiatives and events, and how they interface with mainstream planning This is a space that is often difficult for people to theorise because of the ideological tensions of when you get a community and a state-sanctioned movement intersecting, but I believe that can be very productive, and I'm going to look at that. And in particular, I want to bring a feminist focus to that thinking as well, because we often see that cities are theorised as being gender neutral, but I'd like to look at that and question that as well, specifically in relation to urban transformation. Thank you.
Should have mentioned that in addition to the PhD scholarship, it actually includes the Women in Leadership program at the AGSM. So it's not only about an academic pursuit, but about pivoting Kathy into a leadership role. So well done. But wait, there's more. This year, Alison Myrams, who spoke at last year's Engaging Women, and now the CEO of Roberts Pizzarotti, is supporting 5 new scholarships for women to study construction management and property, as well as 1 scholarship specifically for Indigenous high school leavers to study construction and management and property. And these scholarships are also include mentoring and work placement. So this is a great boon to our faculty, and we're delighted to be the recipients of these. So thank you, Alison. And finally, if we can achieve that in 1 year, let's see where we can get by 2025. 50% or better, that's what I say. So I'm sure there are many women and men that you'd like to talk to more tonight. So please join us in the foyer for some drinks and some networking. But I have one last call to action. I ask everyone here tonight to meet 3 people that you have not met before and to engage. And you may be able to offer skills, expertise, guidance, support, or partnership. Or you may be seeking them for yourself. But who knows, you might find your perfect match. So please join us outside, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you.